Next, I'm going to talk about the string indexing in Python. Strings have the property of immutability, so they're similar to tuple, which means once they're created, they cannot be changed or mutated. You can assign strings to a variable and change the value of that variable, but individual characters within a string cannot be changed. Let's go through some examples just to see how that would work. So I'm just going to create a new variable called Tim, so a piece of string, and I am going to print name index 1. So next thing I want to do, I want to change the first character of this string, and I'm gonna assign J to this. So when we say strings are immutable, means if we try to do something like this, we're going to get an error. Basically, it says a string does not support item assignment, so we can't change that. Now, if I was running another statement saying that name is 0 equal to t, this is an example of checking a value against the variable. So if the output, so once I run it, you see that it will get true because the first variable is true, so it's literally equal to t, and the outcome of that statement is going to be true. So again, don't forget that that's an example of checking if something is literally equal to something else. Now, we said strings are immutable, but similar to tuple, we can always, let's say, concatenate strings. So if I'm running this example, I am adding a piece of a string. Now, because I ran it twice, probably it added it 2 times, but you can assign and you can concatenate a piece of a string to a name. So print name, and I should be able to get, so yeah, every time I run it, it's going to add to it. So alright, so let's move on. So I believe that's clear. Again, don't forget that strings are immutable. Next, I want to talk about traversing strings. Traversing strings simply means examining the string in order to process it one character at a time. And typically in traversing we start with the first character, index 0, and we go all the way until the last character, last letter, until we are finished with our whatever we wanted to do. So let's go through some simple examples just to see how traversing could work. So I'm going to start with a piece of string called Starbucks, and I'm gonna write a while loop. I'm just gonna say while we are less than the length of coffee, then say print, we could just say print coffee. Okay, so if I'm running this piece of code, let's see what we're doing. So we have coffee, and we say while num is less than that, and we need to increase. So I'm going to say num is equal to 0, and then we want to make sure that num is going up every time we run this. So let's see. Coffee is not defined. That's coffee here. So if I'm doing this, so basically we're traversing. So we're starting with the first letter, index 0, num is equal to 0, and as we go through this, it's going to turn to num is equal to 1, which is corresponding to t. It's going to print it, and I'm going to increase it until we reach to the end of. Okay, so another way to do it would be using a for loop. So let's say I have the same statement, and I can say for I in range length of coffee, print coffee, and this would be I. So if I'm running this statement, this should be I see that it will go through again in the same way. It will go through every character. If I wanted to, let's say, show how these characters are being processed one by one, let's just put a star in between them, star sign. So we see that we are going through every character. I could have also, instead of using range and len, we could have simply said for I in coffee, because strings are iterable variables. So if I'm doing that for I in coffee, print I, yes, instead of here I should say I, and I can just do that. So it will basically be an iterator that will go through each of these letters and will print it out. So again, you don't need to use the index. Alright, so we're traversing. Let's go through a simple example. Imagine we have this exercise. We want to traverse through a string that includes numeric values or a bunch of digits, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to ask the user to provide the sum of all the individual digits in that string. Let's say we have entered 1, 2, 3, 4, and we want to type a program that gives us the sum of all the numbers. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. So feel free to pause the video here and try to get an answer on your end before moving forward. Now, if I want to do this, I'm just going to simply, let's say, create a variable, and we're going to give it a bunch of digits. So we have a number, but it's stored as a string, and I'm creating a sum variable. Now we can say for I in X, let's simply just see if we can get each of those characters out. So this will basically give us every character, but again, don't forget that. Let me just type this out down here. The type of X is a string, so each of those is string variables. So let's see how we can solve this problem. And I should have a total plus equal I. So how do we solve this problem? So we have this. So once it goes through every character, once we want to add it, if I'm running this, I'm gonna get a type error. But in order to resolve it, I can use an integer conversion. So we're changing those characters into numeric values. And if I'm doing that, now instead of this, I can say print total, and I should be able to get the value out of this. So if this was a larger number with a bunch of different numbers, again, it should do the same. And let's just get rid of this print. So it will go through this and it will give us the sum of all the characters in it. Alright. So moving on, I talked briefly at the beginning of this video about slicing, but again, just to remind you again that the slicing, when we do 0 to n minus 1, so if there are 12 total characters, we have index starting from 0 to 11. At the same time, if we use -1, it's going to give us the last character, and -12, it's going to give us the first character in string. Let me just copy paste some information here as a comment. So string slicing, and then as I mentioned, when we want to format, we can always and we're slicing it, we can always use different combinations. So for instance, I could have said slice is equal to mp 0, let's say print slice, or I can just say slice, and then in the same way I could have said start from first character or end at somewhere in the middle, or print the whole thing. And also we could have created a step, right? So by stepping I mean a step of 2 or step of 3. So how does it work? It will start from the first character, it will skip 1, 2, 3, and it will print the third one. So M, next one is going to be T, 1, 2, 3, it's going to be P, skip the rest until we reach to the H, and then it will finish. I could have said start from 1 to 10, print 3. So there are different ways of, again, cutting this up. Again, by slicing, we are not mutating, we're not changing the original variable. We're just getting part of this slice and assign it to a different variable. So that's something important to know. Let's try to run an example. We had example of hello. And what I can do is that I can run now a loop in order to do the slicing. So I can say for n in S, slice is equal to S, and we can say start from the beginning and stop at n and print this slice. So let's see what happens. So basically it looks at the range, starts from 0 and then it will go through. So we'll start incrementally printing characters, and if I wanted to get the whole word I probably should say +1, and we could have also defined a slice in a way that, let's say we have that, and then we could have added that, concatenated with the rest of the characters. So for the first run it will take the first character and add it to n till the end. So it will start, the first part will get H and the second part is going to get ELLO. So that statement in the first run should print hello. And as it goes incrementally, it will cut. So basically in this one, that piece is going to be H. In the second run, it's going to be HE. And this will go up and that part will go down. Together they will print the word. Again, just different ways trying to see how string slicing would run. Now let's try to also work with not and also in operators when we're working with the strings. Imagine we have a text says hello, how are you, or hello, are you there, and I'm gonna say slice is equal to, let's just find a few characters, let's say hell, and now we can check if a slice in text print found, otherwise print not found. So we're basically checking if that string is in, if that slice is in the string that we have defined. If it works, it should print found. If it's false, if it doesn't exist in there, it should print not found. So for this example, we see that because that's part of that, we'll see found. If I'm changing that now into hall, we're going to get not hall. And if we want to reverse these statements, we can use not in operator. So if I'm saying not in, and I should reverse these statements as well. So I'm going to remove that. So if it's not in text, say not found, and if it's in it, you can say found. So same thing. So in this example, this slice is not part of the text, but if it was hell, it was part of it, and it would say hello. Hello is found. So we can, in this way we can check if, for instance, a keyword exists in a paragraph or in a piece of text. And next we're gonna work on conversion. We can always convert a string into a list. Let me just bring that thing in here. So if I want to create a list called char or characters, I can say turned, use the list function to turn data string into list, and let's see how that looks like now. So we basically, by running this function, we're going to assign every character as a single value in the list, and now I can do other things with it. Let's say we can now slice it if we wanted to slice. Let's say I want to see 2 onward, right? The same way that we were working, or I want to see every other character starting from 1. So you can again play around with this once you turn those characters into a list. And once we turn it into a list, we can also use all the methods that are associated with list, which we have covered previously.